Standing at the edge of my sister's reception, watching her dance with our father, who had paid for everything except my seat at the family table, I felt the familiar sting of being the forgotten daughter. 28 years old, successful marketing director, and still invisible in my own family. Then a voice behind me whispered urgently, "Act like you are with me." I turned to see a tall man with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Your family just seated me at the singles table, but I think there has been a massive mistake. I am Detective Marcus Rivera, and I have been investigating your brother-in-law for months." Before we dive into this wild story of family betrayal and unexpected justice, tell me where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you have ever felt like the outsider at family events, and subscribe because this story has more twists than a soap opera. Trust me, you will want to see how karma finally catches up to the golden child who thought she was untouchable. Marcus guided me to the quiet corner of the venue, his badge discreetly visible in his jacket. "Your sister Sarah married Thomas Blackwell 3 hours ago," he said, his voice low and serious. "What she does not know is that her new husband has been running an elaborate insurance fraud scheme through his law firm for the past 2 years. My mind raced back to all the expensive gifts Thomas had been showering Sarah with lately. The designer handbags, the luxury car, the down payment on their dream house. Mom and Dad had been so impressed with their future son-in-law's success, constantly comparing his achievements to my modest apartment and single status. "Insurance fraud," I whispered, glancing across the room where Sarah was laughing with our parents, her $3,000 dress sparkling under the chandeliers. Marcus nodded grimly. "He has been filing false claims for accidents that never happened, working with a network of crooked doctors and fake witnesses. We estimate he has stolen over $2 million from insurance companies across 3 states. The FBI has been building a case, and tonight was supposed to be surveillance only." I felt a sick satisfaction brewing in my stomach. All those years of being told I needed to be more like Sarah, more successful, more charming. All those family dinners where Thomas was praised as the perfect catch, while I sat there eating my disappointment along with Mom's overcooked roast. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Because your family invited me," Marcus said, showing me a formal invitation with my name crossed out and his written in. "Someone used your +1 invitation to get me in here. Someone wanted me to witness Thomas signing his new marriage certificate, which legally binds him to Sarah's assets. Someone wanted me to see him celebrate while his victims struggled to pay medical bills he inflated through his fraudulent network." The pieces clicked together like a puzzle solving itself. Someone in my family knew about Thomas's crimes and had orchestrated this moment. "But who? There is more," Marcus continued, pulling out a tablet discreetly. "We have been monitoring his communications, and today we intercepted messages between Thomas and his business partner discussing their next target. They plan to stage a major accident involving Sarah's new car, the one Thomas surprised her with last month. She was supposed to be the victim of their biggest insurance scam yet." My blood turned cold. Whatever satisfaction I had felt about Thomas being a criminal evaporated instantly. Sarah might be the golden child, but she was still my sister. "When?" I managed to ask. "Next week during their honeymoon. The accident would have been staged on a remote mountain road in Colorado. Sarah would have survived, but with injuries serious enough to justify a $5 million insurance payout. Of course the injuries would have been real, even if the accident was not." I looked across the room at Sarah, radiant in her happiness, completely unaware that she had just married a man who was planning to use her as a pawn in his criminal enterprise. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely protective of my sister instead of resentful. "What can we do?" I asked Marcus. "We need evidence of him committing a crime tonight, something concrete enough to arrest him before they leave for their honeymoon," Marcus explained. "The problem is, he has been careful, too careful. But desperate people make mistakes, and marriage changes everything." As if summoned by our conversation, Thomas appeared beside us with 2 glasses of champagne, his smile wide and predatory. "Meredith, I see you have found yourself a companion for the evening. How wonderful. Sarah was just saying how worried she was about you being here all alone. The condescension dripped from his words like poison honey. I wanted to throw the champagne in his face, but Marcus's subtle touch on my arm reminded me we were playing a longer game now. "Thomas, congratulations," I said, accepting the glass. "You certainly landed yourself quite a catch with Sarah." His eyes glittered with an emotion I could not quite identify. "Pride, greed. Something darker." "Indeed I did," Thomas replied. "Sarah brings so much to our partnership. Her trust fund, her family connections, her excellent health insurance policy through her job at the hospital. A man could not ask for more valuable assets in a wife." The way he said assets made my skin crawl. Marcus stepped closer, his detective instincts clearly activated by Thomas's revealing choice of words. "You must feel so lucky," Marcus said casually. "Insurance policies can be tricky these days. So many regulations, so much paperwork." Thomas's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but I caught it. A flicker of suspicion crossed his features before the practiced charm slid back into place. "Oh, I am quite familiar with insurance matters through my legal practice," Thomas said smoothly. "In fact, I have helped many clients navigate complex claims processes. It is amazing how much money people leave on the table simply because they do not understand their coverage options." Marcus and I exchanged a quick glance. Thomas was practically confessing his crimes while thinking he was impressing us with his expertise. The evening was about to become much more interesting than any of us had anticipated. Marcus excused himself to make a phone call, leaving me alone with Thomas, who seemed increasingly eager to discuss his professional successes. The alcohol was flowing freely, and my new brother-in-law was becoming more talkative by the minute. "You know, Meredith," Thomas said, moving closer with the confidence of someone who believed he was untouchable, "your sister is lucky to have someone who can provide real financial security. Not everyone understands how to maximize opportunities in today's economy." I forced myself to smile and play the role of impressed little sister. "You certainly seem to have figured out how to make money work for you. Sarah mentioned you just bought another property." Thomas's chest puffed with pride. "3 properties, actually, all excellent investments. The key is understanding risk management and knowing which situations present the most profitable outcomes." He was speaking in code, but barely. Every word felt like a confession wrapped in business jargon. "That sounds so sophisticated," I said, channeling every ounce of fake admiration I could muster. "I wish I understood finances better. Maybe you could give me some advice sometime." "Well," Thomas said, glancing around to ensure we were not being overheard, "the secret is recognizing that sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected situations. Accidents happen, Meredith. Smart people prepare for them. Even smarter people know how to create opportunities from unfortunate circumstances." My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. He was talking about staging accidents like they were legitimate business strategies. Marcus returned with perfect timing, sliding seamlessly back into our conversation. "Sorry about that work call," he said. "Thomas was just explaining some investment strategies." "Indeed," Thomas said, warming to his audience. "I was telling Meredith that successful people understand how to turn setbacks into advantages. Take car accidents, for example. Most people see them as disasters, but someone with proper insurance knowledge can turn even a serious accident into a financial opportunity." Marcus leaned in with apparent interest. "Really? How so?" Thomas was drunk enough now to feel invincible, surrounded by what he thought was an admiring audience at his own wedding reception. "Well, hypothetically speaking, if someone had comprehensive coverage and understood how to document injuries properly, a single accident could provide enough settlement money to set them up for life. The key is working with the right medical professionals and knowing how to present a compelling case to insurance adjusters." I felt Marcus tense beside me. Thomas was essentially outlining his entire criminal operation while thinking he was giving financial advice. "That is fascinating," Marcus said. "Do you know medical professionals who specialize in these types of cases?" "Oh, I have connections throughout the medical community," Thomas bragged. Doctors who understand the real impact of trauma injuries, who are not afraid to properly document pain and suffering. Physical therapists who recognize when patients need extended treatment programs. It is all about building the right professional network. He was describing his network of conspirators as professional contacts. The audacity was staggering. Sarah is so lucky to have married someone so well connected, I said, fighting the urge to warn my sister immediately. I bet her insurance coverage through the hospital is really comprehensive too. Thomas's eyes lit up with an unsettling enthusiasm. $5 million life insurance policy plus full medical coverage with no caps on emergency treatment. She is very well protected. The way he said protected sounded more like a threat than reassurance. Marcus's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with practiced nonchalance. "Excuse me for just one moment," he said, stepping away again. I was left alone with Thomas, who was now looking at me with an expression that made my skin crawl. "You know, Meredith," he said quietly, "you and I should get to know each other better. Family is so important, and I think you understand things that Sarah might not appreciate yet." "What kind of things?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know. "Practical things. Sarah has always been sheltered, protected by your parents' wealth and her idealistic view of the world. But you seem more realistic, more understanding of how things really work." He was testing me, trying to determine if I could be recruited into his schemes or if I posed a threat to his plans. "I have always been more of a realist," I agreed carefully. "Good." Thomas set his hand briefly touching my arm in a gesture that felt more like a claim than comfort. Because family members who understand business can be very valuable allies. And family members who do not understand sometimes find themselves in unfortunate situations. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Thomas was letting me know that he saw me as either an asset to be utilized or a problem to be eliminated. Marcus returned, and I could see from his expression that whatever information he had received was significant. "Thomas," Marcus said casually, "I hope you do not mind me asking, but what kind of law do you practice? I am always interested in meeting fellow legal professionals." Thomas's expression flickered with uncertainty for the first time that evening. "Oh, general practice mostly. Business law, some personal injury cases. Nothing too specialized." "Interesting," Marcus replied. "I work in law enforcement, so I have a lot of interaction with attorneys. Have we met before? You seem familiar." The color drained from Thomas's face as the implications of Marcus's statement sank in. He had spent the evening confessing his crimes to a police detective. The trap was closing, and Thomas was finally beginning to realize he had walked right into it. Thomas's confident demeanor cracked like ice under pressure. His eyes darted between Marcus and me, searching for an escape route that did not exist. "Law enforcement," Thomas repeated, his voice carefully controlled, but lacking its earlier smoothness. "What branch?" "Financial Crimes Division," Marcus replied with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "We specialize in insurance fraud, actually. Amazing how many people think they can outsmart the system." I watched Thomas's face cycle through emotions, fear, anger, and finally a cold calculation that terrified me more than his panic had. This was a man who had been caught but was not ready to surrender. "How interesting," Thomas said, his lawyer training kicking in. "I imagine you see all sorts of creative schemes in that line of work." "Oh, you have no idea," Marcus continued conversationally. "Just last month we arrested a group that had been staging accidents for insurance payouts. Doctors, lawyers, even some patients who thought easy money was worth the risk. Turns out when you are looking at 20 years in federal prison, everyone becomes very talkative." Thomas's hand tightened around his champagne glass until his knuckles went white. "Well, I am sure justice prevailed." "Always does eventually," Marcus said. "The thing about financial crimes is they leave paper trails, bank deposits, medical records, communication logs. Modern technology makes it almost impossible to hide money movements, especially when you are dealing with millions of dollars." I could see sweat forming on Thomas's forehead despite the air conditioning. He was trapped in a conversation that was systematically destroying any hope he had of maintaining his innocence. "Millions," I asked, playing my part perfectly. "People actually steal that much through insurance fraud?" "The case I am working on right now involves over $2 million in false claims," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Thomas's face. The interesting thing is how the perpetrator got greedy, started involving family members using their insurance policies for bigger scores. That is usually when they make the mistakes that bring them down. Thomas set his champagne glass down with shaking hands. If you will excuse me, I should check on Sarah. Wedding nights are for spending time with your bride, not discussing work. But as he turned to leave, Marcus's phone rang loudly. He answered with a professional tone that cut through the wedding reception chatter. Detective Rivera. Yes, I am on location. What are you certain? No, keep the surveillance in place. Do not move until I give the signal. Thomas had frozen mid-step, clearly straining to hear the conversation. Marcus hung up and looked directly at Thomas with an expression that had shifted from friendly to official. Well, Thomas, that was my partner. It seems we have just intercepted some very interesting communications from your business phone. I think there has been some mistake, Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. No mistake, Marcus replied, pulling out his badge officially for the first time. Thomas Blackwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, wire fraud, and attempted extortion. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Around us, wedding guests continued their celebrations, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. This is ridiculous, Thomas sputtered, but he was already looking around for exit routes. You have no evidence of anything. I was making conversation. Actually, we have quite a bit of evidence, Marcus said calmly. Bank records showing unusual deposits coinciding with insurance payouts. Phone records connecting you to known fraudsters. Medical records that have been falsified. And now, thanks to tonight's conversation, we have you describing your methods to a law enforcement officer. Thomas's face went from pale to ashen gray. I want a lawyer. You are a lawyer, Marcus pointed out, though I suspect your bar association is going to have some questions about your professional conduct very soon. That was when Sarah appeared beside us, radiant and breathless from dancing. Thomas, there you are. Mom wants us to cut the cake soon and... She trailed off, taking in the tension between the three of us and Marcus's badge. What is going on? Thomas looked at his new bride with an expression that broke my heart. For just a moment, I saw genuine love and regret in his eyes before the calculating criminal took over again. Sarah, darling, there has been a misunderstanding, he said, reaching for her hand. This gentleman thinks I am someone else. But Marcus was already signaling to other officers positioned around the venue. I realized that this had been a coordinated operation from the beginning. Sarah Blackwell, Marcus said gently. I am Detective Rivera. Your husband is under arrest for financial crimes. I need you to step away from him, please. Sarah's bouquet fell from her hands, the white roses scattering across the floor like fallen snow. Under arrest, Thomas, tell him this is a mistake. Tell him... But Thomas was no longer looking at Sarah. His eyes were fixed on me with a hatred so pure it made my blood freeze. You, he said quietly. You set this up somehow. You have always been jealous of Sarah, and now you have ruined the most important day of her life. The accusation hit me like a physical blow, not because it was true, but because I could see Sarah beginning to believe it. My sister's face was cycling through confusion, betrayal, and finally settling on a familiar expression of blame directed at me. Meredith, Sarah whispered. Did you know about this? Before I could answer, more FBI agents appeared surrounding Thomas with professional efficiency. The wedding reception ground to a halt as guests realized something serious was happening. Thomas Blackwell, the lead agent announced, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit assault with intent to defraud. The last charge made Sarah gasp audibly. Assault Thomas would never hurt anyone. But I knew better now. I knew about the planned honeymoon accident, about how Thomas had been planning to use Sarah as an unwitting victim in his biggest score yet. As they led Thomas away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one final time. This is not over, Meredith, he called out. You think you have won something, but you have just destroyed your own family. Sarah will never forgive you for this. Looking at my sister's devastated face, I feared he might be right. The wedding reception transformed into a crime scene within minutes. FBI agents were interviewing guests, collecting evidence, and documenting everything, while Sarah stood in her wedding dress, mascara streaming down her cheeks, staring at me like I had personally destroyed her life. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "On my wedding day, Meredith. How could you be so cruel?" But before I could defend myself, our mother appeared beside us, her face pale but determined. "Sarah, honey, there is something you need to know. Something we all need to know." Mom looked at Detective Rivera, who nodded his permission for her to continue. "I invited Detective Rivera tonight," Mom said quietly. "I am the one who arranged for him to be here." The confession hit like lightning. Sarah's mouth fell open, and I felt my own world shift sideways. "What?" Sarah gasped. "Mom, what are you saying?" Mom's hands were shaking as she reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "3 weeks ago I received this in the mail. No return address, no note, just documents." She opened the envelope and spread the contents across a nearby table. Bank statements, medical records, photographs, phone transcripts. The evidence of Thomas's crimes laid out in meticulous detail. "Insurance claims for accidents that never happened," Mom said, pointing to highlighted sections. "Payments to doctors for fake medical reports. Pictures of Thomas meeting with known criminals. And this," she pulled out a photograph that made my blood run cold. Thomas and another man examining Sarah's car, pointing to specific areas, while holding what appeared to be blueprints. "This was taken last Tuesday," Mom continued, "the same day Thomas told Sarah he had surprised her with upgraded brakes as a wedding gift. According to the documents, those were not upgrades. They were sabotage devices designed to fail during your honeymoon drive through the Colorado mountains." Sarah's legs gave out and she collapsed into a chair. No, this cannot be real. Thomas loves me. He would never—" "Sarah," Mom said gently, kneeling beside her daughter. "The plan was to make you the victim of his biggest insurance fraud yet. The accident was supposed to injure you severely enough to justify a $5 million payout, but not severely enough to kill you immediately. You would have suffered for months while he collected money from your pain." Detective Rivera stepped forward with additional evidence. "We have been monitoring Thomas for 8 months. When we discovered his plan to involve you, we reached out to your mother through victim services. She chose to cooperate with our investigation to protect you." I stared at Mom in amazement. "You knew all of this and never said anything." "I could not risk Thomas finding out and changing his plans," Mom explained. "If he had suspected we knew, he might have killed Sarah outright to collect the life insurance instead. The only way to protect her was to let the wedding proceed and arrest him with enough evidence to ensure he could never hurt her." Sarah was sobbing now, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. "But I love him. I married him. How could I have been so stupid?" "You were not stupid," I said, finally finding my voice. "You were manipulated by a professional criminal. Thomas spent 2 years studying our family, learning how to become exactly what you thought you wanted." Mom pulled out another document, this one even more shocking. Sarah Thomas was not even his real name. His actual name is David Morrison, and he has done this before, 3 times. Each time he marries a woman with good insurance coverage, stages an accident during the honeymoon, and disappears with the payout while she recovers in the hospital. Detective Rivera nodded grimly. His first wife died in what appeared to be a hiking accident. The second wife survived a car crash but sustained permanent injuries. The third wife became suspicious and contacted police before the planned accident. That is how we started tracking him. Sarah looked up at me with eyes full of tears and dawning understanding. "Meredith, I am so sorry. All those times I made you feel left out, all those family dinners where we praised Thomas while ignoring your achievements. You tried to warn me, did you not? You never liked him." I thought back to the subtle comments I had made over the past year, the gentle questions about Thomas's background that Sarah had dismissed as jealousy. I just felt like something was off about him, but I could never put my finger on what it was. "Your instincts were right," Detective Rivera said. "Thomas chose Sarah specifically because he believed her family would be easier to manipulate than his previous targets. He saw you as a potential threat to his plans. which is why he worked so hard to isolate Sarah from you." Mom stood up slowly, looking older than her 62 years. The hardest part was watching Thomas convince Sarah that Meredith was the problem. Every time he made a comment about how much better their relationship would be without family interference, I wanted to scream the truth. "So the seating arrangement tonight," I began, "was designed to make Thomas comfortable," Mom finished. "We needed him to feel secure enough to reveal information to Detective Rivera. Making you sit alone was part of the setup, and I am so sorry for that." Dad appeared beside us, his face grim. "The FBI asked us to act normally, to treat tonight like any other family event. Do you know how hard it was to walk my daughter down the aisle, knowing her groom was planning to hurt her?" Sarah looked around at all of us, her family who had risked everything to save her from a monster she had fallen in love with. "How long have you all known?" 3 weeks, Mom said. "The longest 3 weeks of my life." "The wedding planning, the dress shopping, all of it was fake," Sarah asked. "Your happiness was real," I said firmly. "Your love was real. The fact that Thomas was deceiving you does not make your feelings any less valid." Detective Rivera's radio crackled to life. "Rivera here. Yes, we have him secured. What about the Colorado team? Excellent. Yes, we will need a full forensics team on the vehicle." He turned back to us. "Thomas's partner has been arrested in Colorado, and we have recovered the devices that were installed in your car, Sarah. You would not have survived the planned accident." The finality of that statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah had been 24 hours away from becoming the victim of an elaborate murder plot disguised as a honeymoon tragedy. "What happens now?" Sarah asked quietly. "Now," Detective Rivera said, "Thomas goes to prison for a very long time, and you get to rebuild your life with people who actually love you." As FBI agents continued their work around us, I realized that this nightmare was finally coming to an end. But for my sister, the healing process was just beginning. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Thomas or David Morrison, as we now knew him, receive his sentence. Sarah sat beside me, her hand gripping mine, as the judge delivered the verdict that would define the rest of our lives. "David Morrison, you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud in the amount of $2.3 million wire fraud money laundering and conspiracy to commit assault with intent to defraud. This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole." Sarah exhaled slowly beside me. It was over. Really, truly over. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and family healing. Sarah had moved back in with our parents immediately after the wedding, too traumatized to live alone and too ashamed to face her friends. The annulment had been swift once Thomas's true identity and criminal background were revealed. But the real work had been rebuilding our family relationships. "I need you to know," Sarah had said to me during one of our therapy sessions, "that I do not blame you for any of this. If anything, I blame myself for not listening to your concerns about Thomas." "David," I had corrected gently. "His name was David. Thomas was just another lie." The therapist had helped us understand how David had systematically manipulated our family dynamics to isolate Sarah from anyone who might question his motives. He had weaponized our existing sibling rivalry, turning my legitimate concerns into evidence of jealousy in Sarah's mind. He studied our family for months before he even approached Sarah, Mom had explained during one session. The FBI found detailed notes about each of us, our personalities, our weaknesses, our financial situations. He knew exactly how to present himself as Sarah's perfect match. The investigation had revealed the full scope of David's crimes. He had stolen over $4 million through fraudulent insurance claims across 7 states. His network included corrupt doctors, fake witnesses, and even a few insurance adjusters who had been taking bribes to approve suspicious claims. But perhaps the most shocking discovery was the planned accident itself. Forensics experts testified that the devices installed in Sarah's car were designed to cause brake failure on mountain curves, making the accident appear completely random. Sarah would have been thrown from the vehicle at high speed, sustaining injuries that would have required months of expensive medical treatment. The defendant's plan was particularly cruel, the prosecutor had argued during closing statements. He did not simply want to steal money from insurance companies. He wanted to torture his victim to profit from her pain and suffering while playing the role of devoted husband. David had tried to maintain his innocence throughout the trial, but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone recordings, financial documents, witness testimony from his previous victims, and the damning conversation he had with Detective Rivera at the wedding reception all combined to paint a picture of a man who viewed other people as nothing more than financial opportunities. His sentencing hearing had been particularly satisfying. Sarah had chosen to give a victim impact statement, and her words had been powerful enough to move several jury members to tears. "David Morrison stole more than money from me," she had said, standing tall and strong in front of the judge. "He stole my ability to trust, my faith in love, and my sense of safety in the world. He turned my wedding day into a crime scene and my honeymoon plans into an attempted murder plot. But he did not break me, and he did not destroy my family." She had looked directly at David during her statement. "You chose the wrong family to target. We are stronger than you anticipated, and we love each other more than you understood. Your crimes brought us together instead of tearing us apart." Now, watching the bailiffs lead David away in shackles for the final time, I felt a profound sense of closure. Justice had been served, but more importantly, our family had survived his attempts to destroy us. Outside the courthouse, Detective Rivera approached us with news that felt like the final piece of the puzzle. "I wanted you to know," he said to Sarah, "that your case has helped us connect David to 2 other suspicious deaths, women whose husbands collected large insurance payouts after hiking accidents. The families are finally going to get answers." Sarah nodded solemnly. "I am glad something good can come from this nightmare." "There is something else," Detective Rivera continued. "The insurance companies are offering a substantial reward for information leading to David's conviction. Since your family's cooperation was instrumental in stopping him, you are entitled to compensation for your role in the investigation." "We do not want blood money," Mom said immediately. "Actually," Sarah interjected, "I think we should accept it, but not for ourselves." She looked at me with the expression I had never seen before: respect, love, and determination combined. "I want to use that money to start a foundation that helps other women recognize the warning signs of relationship fraud. If we can prevent even one woman from going through what I experienced, David's crimes will have served a purpose." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. My sister had transformed from a naive victim into a fierce advocate for others. "The Sarah Morrison Foundation for Relationship Safety," I suggested. "No," Sarah said firmly, "the Sarah and Meredith Foundation, because none of this would have been possible without my sister's instincts and our family's love." Detective Rivera smiled. "I think that sounds perfect." As we walked away from the courthouse together, I realized that David Morrison had failed in every possible way. He had intended to isolate Sarah from her family, but instead had brought us closer together. He had planned to profit from her suffering, but instead had inspired her to help others. He had thought he could manipulate and control us, but instead had taught us the true value of trust and unconditional love. Justice had been served, but more importantly, our family had been healed. 2 years later, I stood at the podium of our foundation's annual gala, looking out at a room full of survivors' advocates and supporters who had come together to celebrate our mission. Sarah sat at the front table radiant in a way that had nothing to do with designer clothes or expensive jewelry. "When my sister was targeted by a professional relationship predator," I began, "our family learned that love is not just about supporting each other's dreams. Sometimes love means protecting each other from nightmares we cannot yet see." The Sarah and Meredith Foundation had grown beyond our wildest expectations. We had helped over 300 women recognize and escape fraudulent relationships. Our educational programs were being implemented in colleges across the country. Our legal aid program had secured convictions against 12 other relationship criminals. But the real victory was sitting right in front of me. Sarah had not only recovered from her trauma, she had transformed it into purpose. She now worked as a victim advocate using her experience to help other women navigate the legal and emotional aftermath of relationship fraud. Her testimony had been instrumental in passing new federal legislation that made relationship-based financial crimes easier to prosecute. The most important lesson we learned, I continued, is that healing happens in community. David Morrison counted on our family being divided by jealousy and competition. He failed to understand that when you target one of us, you target all of us. Our parents had also changed in profound ways. Dad had become one of our foundation's most dedicated volunteers, using his business connections to fund our programs. Mom had started a support group for parents whose children had been victimized by relationship predators. Family is not just about blood, I said, looking around the room at faces that had become dear to me over the past 2 years. Family is about choosing to stand together when someone tries to tear you apart. Detective Rivera, who had become a close family friend, sat with his wife at a table near the back. He had been promoted to head the FBI's new Relationship Crimes Task Force, a division that had been created largely because of our case's success. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in my relationship with Sarah. We had discovered that we actually liked each other when we were not competing for parental approval or measuring our worth against impossible standards. My sister taught me that survival is not just about getting through the crisis, I said, my voice catching slightly. Survival is about using your experience to ensure others do not have to endure what you endured. Sarah had started dating again 6 months ago, a kind, patient man named James who had volunteered with our foundation before they met. He understood her history, supported her work, and had earned the enthusiastic approval of our entire family. Their relationship was built on transparency, shared values, and genuine compatibility, rather than manipulation and deception. Before I close tonight, I said, I want to share one final thought. David Morrison believed that love makes people vulnerable, that family bonds could be weaponized against us. He was wrong. Love makes us stronger. Family bonds become our greatest protection when we choose to trust them. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. I was focused on Sarah's face, glowing with pride and purpose. After the event, Sarah and I sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the city, sharing a bottle of wine, and reflecting on how far we had traveled from that terrible wedding night. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Detective Rivera had not been there? Sarah asked. Every day, I admitted. But then I remind myself that Mom would have found another way to protect you. Our family would have found another way to save you. Sarah smiled. You know what the strangest part is? I am actually grateful it happened. I raised an eyebrow. Grateful, not for the trauma or the betrayal, she clarified quickly, but for what came after, for discovering how much we all love each other, for finding my purpose, for learning what real strength looks like. She was right. David Morrison had intended to destroy us, but instead had revealed our capacity for love, courage, and resilience. So, Sarah said, raising her wine glass, here is to family vengeance served through justice, healing served through purpose, and love served through truth. I clinked my glass against hers. And here is to never underestimating the power of women who refuse to be victims. As we sat there watching the city lights twinkle below us, I realized that our story had become something neither David Morrison nor we ourselves had expected. It had become a testament to the unbreakable bonds of family and the transformative power of turning pain into purpose. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and truth in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your experiences might help someone else navigate a difficult situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help us reach others who might need to hear about the warning signs of relationship fraud. Subscribe for more stories about family resilience and justice, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from Sarah's journey from victim to advocate. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey, and remember that sometimes the greatest revenge against those who try to harm us is simply refusing to let them define our future. Until next time, trust your instincts, protect your loved ones, and never underestimate the healing power of choosing love over fear.